In the stillness of the night, when the world grows quiet and your heart feels heavy, there exists a truth that transcends every worry, every fear, every moment of uncertainty that weighs upon your soul. It is a truth that has echoed through the ages, whispered in the darkness to those who desperately need to hear it. Tonight, as you find yourself here, searching for something more than what this world can offer, I want you to know that your prayers do not fall upon deaf ears. Jesus hears your prayers, every whispered plea in the early morning hours, every desperate cry in moments of pain, every quiet thank you in times of joy. He hears them all. But more than just hearing, He receives them into His very heart, carrying your burdens as if they were His own. This is not merely a comforting thought or religious sentiment. This is the foundation upon which your weary soul can finally rest. You see, in our fast-paced world, filled with endless notifications, constant demands, and relentless pressure to perform, we have forgotten what it means to truly rest. We have convinced ourselves that rest is earned through accomplishment, that peace comes through control, that comfort is found in our own strength. But tonight, I want to show you a different way, a way that leads not to exhaustion, but to restoration, not to anxiety, but to peace, not to striving, but to resting in the arms of the one who created you. The journey we are about to take together will transform how you approach prayer, how you understand rest, and how you experience the presence of Jesus in your daily life. We will discover why so many believers struggle with doubt when they pray, why rest feels elusive even in quiet moments, and most importantly, how Jesus Himself provides the pathway to both answered prayer and perfect peace. But before we dive deeper into this life-changing revelation, let me share with you something that will reshape everything you thought you knew about prayer and rest. You see, most of us approach prayer like a transaction. We come to God with our lists, our requests, our urgent needs, treating prayer like a cosmic vending machine where we insert our faith and expect immediate results. When those results do not come in the way or timing we expect, we begin to question. Does God really hear me? Am I praying correctly? Have I done something wrong? These questions reveal a fundamental misunderstanding of what prayer truly is and how Jesus responds to our hearts. Tonight, we will uncover 3 profound truths that will revolutionize your prayer life and lead you into the rest your soul desperately craves. First, we will explore the intimate nature of how Jesus listens to your prayers, discovering that He does not merely hear your words, but understands the groaning of your heart that cannot be expressed in language. Second, we will examine what it truly means to rest with Jesus, moving beyond surface-level peace to experience the deep, abiding rest that only He can provide. And third, we will learn practical ways to position our hearts to receive both answers to prayer and supernatural rest, even in the midst of life's storms. Throughout history, countless believers have discovered these truths in their darkest moments. When circumstances seemed impossible, when hope appeared lost, when the weight of life threatened to crush their spirits, they found something extraordinary. They found that Jesus was not distant or disinterested, but intimately involved in every detail of their struggle. They learned that His ears are always open to their cries, His heart always moved by their pain, His hands always ready to provide exactly what they need. Consider for a moment the shepherds in the fields on that holy night when angels announced the birth of the Savior. These were not wealthy men or religious leaders or people of influence. They were ordinary workers, overlooked by society, going about their daily routines when heaven suddenly broke through. The angels did not appear to kings or priests first, but to those who were quietly faithful in the darkness. This reveals something beautiful about the heart of Jesus. He comes to those who need him most, who seek him call out to him in their ordinary, not for what he can do, but for who he is. This same Jesus who came to shepherds in a field comes to you in your living room, your car, your workplace, wherever you find yourself crying out to him. Distance does not diminish his ability to hear. Time does not delay his response. Circumstances do not limit his power to intervene. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and his love for you burns with the same intensity today as it did when he willingly gave his life on the cross. But here is where many of us struggle. We have been taught to measure God's love by our circumstances, to evaluate his faithfulness by the speed of his answers, to determine his presence by how we feel in any given moment. This approach leads to spiritual exhaustion because it makes our relationship with Jesus dependent on variables that constantly change rather than on the unchanging nature of his character. When we truly understand that Jesus hears our prayers, we begin to approach him differently. We stop demanding immediate results and start trusting his perfect timing. We cease trying to manipulate outcomes and begin surrendering to his wisdom. We quit measuring his love by what he gives us and start resting in the truth of who he is. This shift changes everything about how we pray and how we experience rest in his presence. The rest that Jesus offers is not the absence of activity, but the presence of peace in the midst of whatever you are facing. It is not escape from reality, but strength to face reality with supernatural grace. It is not a temporary feeling that comes and goes, but a settled confidence in his goodness that remains steady regardless of external circumstances. Think about the most peaceful moment you have ever experienced. Perhaps it was watching a sunset, holding a newborn child, or simply sitting in complete silence after a long day. That peace you felt was just a glimpse, a small taste of what Jesus offers to your soul every moment of every day. The difference is that earthly peace depends on perfect conditions, while the peace of Jesus transcends all conditions. As we continue this journey together, you will discover that prayer is not about convincing God to care about your needs. He already cares more than you could possibly imagine. Prayer is not about earning his attention. You already have it completely. Prayer is not about finding the right words to move his heart. Your heart has already moved his heart. Instead, prayer becomes a sacred conversation between you and the one who knows you better than you know yourself, loves you more than you love yourself, and has plans for you that are better than anything you could plan for yourself. The rest he offers flows naturally from this understanding. When you truly believe that Jesus hears every prayer, sees every tear, knows every struggle, and is working all things together for your good, your soul can finally exhale. The constant tension of trying to control outcomes melts away. The anxiety about whether God really cares dissolves. The fear that you are alone thinking or wishful hoping in your struggles disappears. This is not positive. This is the solid foundation of biblical truth that has sustained believers through every kind of trial imaginable. It is the rock upon which you can build a life of unshakable peace, confident prayer, and deep spiritual rest. In the ancient scriptures, we find a beautiful picture of this truth. The psalmist writes that the Lord is near to all who call upon him, to all who call upon him in truth. Notice that it does not say he is near only to those who pray eloquently or to those whose is near to all who call upon him, faith never wavers. He genuinely, from the depths of their hearts, regardless of how broken or inadequate they may feel. This nearness is not a metaphor or spiritual symbolism. It is the living reality of a God who chose to dwell among us, who took on human flesh so that he could understand every aspect of our experience. When Jesus walked this earth, he experienced hunger, thirst, exhaustion, rejection, betrayal, and pain. He knows what it feels like when your body aches and your heart breaks. He understands the weight of responsibility, the sting of disappointment, the loneliness that can overwhelm even in a crowded room. Because of this shared human experience, when you pray to Jesus, you are not speaking to someone who observes your struggles from a distance. You are pouring out your heart to someone who has walked the same difficult paths, who has felt the same crushing pressures, who has experienced the same overwhelming emotions. This is why his compassion is not theoretical, but deeply personal and immediately available. Many believers have testified to moments when they sensed the presence of Jesus so tangibly during prayer that it felt as though he was sitting right beside them. Others describe times when peace flooded their hearts in the middle of crisis, when strength came from nowhere in moments of weakness, when hope returned after it seemed lost forever. These are not coincidences or emotional experiences. These are the natural results of connecting with the one who promises never to leave you nor forsake you. The invitation to rest with Jesus is not a call to passivity, but to active trust. It means bringing your full self into his presence, holding nothing back, hiding nothing, pretending nothing. It means coming as you are, not as you think you should be. Whether you are struggling with doubt, wrestling with anger, drowning in sorrow, or overwhelmed by fear, he welcomes you exactly where you are in this moment. This kind of authentic encounter requires vulnerability, and vulnerability can feel frightening. We live in a culture that rewards strength and success while hiding weakness and struggle. We have learned to present polished versions of ourselves, to keep our real struggles private, to pretend we have everything figured out. But Jesus calls us to something radically different. He invites us to come boldly to the throne of grace, not because we are strong, but because he is strong. Not because we are worthy, but because he makes us worthy. Not because we have earned access, but because he has provided access through his sacrifice. When you begin to pray from this place of honesty and vulnerability, something supernatural happens. The walls you have built around your heart begin to crumble. The masks you wear to protect yourself become unnecessary. The performance you maintain to earn approval fades away. You discover that Jesus loves the real you more than the version of yourself you have been trying to present to the world. This discovery transforms not only how you pray, but how you live. The anxiety that once drove you to control every outcome begins to loosen its grip. The fear that once paralyzed you in difficult decisions starts to lose its power. The loneliness that once convinced you that no one truly understands begins to heal as you experience the companionship of the one who knows you completely and loves you unconditionally. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this journey is how it changes your understanding of answered prayer. When we first begin praying, we often focus primarily on getting what we want when we want it. We measure God's faithfulness by how quickly he responds to our requests and how closely his answers match our expectations. This approach leaves us frustrated when his timing differs from ours and confused when his answers look different than what we envisioned. As we mature in our relationship with Jesus, we begin to recognize that his answers are always perfect, even when they are not immediate. We start to see that his delays are not denials, but opportunities for our faith to grow. We discover that his different ways of answering often lead to outcomes far better than what we originally requested. We learn that sometimes the greatest answer to prayer is not the changing of our circumstances, but the changing of our hearts in the midst of those circumstances. This deeper understanding brings profound rest to the soul. Instead of anxiously waiting for God to fix everything according to our timeline, we learn to trust his wisdom and timing. Instead of becoming bitter when prayers seem unanswered, we develop patience to wait for his perfect response. Instead of questioning his love when life gets difficult, we rest in the knowledge that he is always working for our ultimate good. The peace that flows from this kind of trust is unlike unfavorable circumstances or positive outcomes. It remains anything the world offers. It is not dependent, steady in the storm, constant in uncertainty, and secure in the midst of change. This is the peace that Jesus promised when he said he would leave his peace with us. Not as the world gives, but as only he can give. As this supernatural peace begins to take root in your heart, you will notice something extraordinary happening in the ordinary moments of your life. The traffic jam that once sent your stress levels soaring becomes an Jesus. The difficult conversation you opportunity to practice presence with, to lean on his wisdom. The slee have been dreading transforms into a chance-epless night, filled with worry becomes a sacred space where you discover his faithfulness in the darkness. This is not about denying reality or pretending that difficulties do not exist. This is about learning to see every circumstance through the lens of his unchanging love and sovereign control. When challenges arise, instead of your first instinct being panic or despair, you find yourself naturally turning to the one who has proven himself faithful time and time again. When uncertainty clouds your path, instead of being paralyzed by fear of the unknown, you rest in the confidence that he sees the end from the beginning and is preparing the way before you. The transformation happens gradually, often so subtly that you may not notice it at first. Friends and family begin to comment on a change they see in you. There is a calmness in your voice during crisis. There is a strength in your step even when walking through difficulty. There is a light in your eyes that cannot be explained by circumstances alone. This is the fruit of a life that has learned to rest in the truth that Jesus hears every prayer and responds with perfect love. But let me address something that may be stirring in your heart right now. Perhaps you are thinking about prayers that feel unanswered, situations that seem hopeless, pain that appears endless. You may be wondering how these truths apply when you have been crying out to Jesus for months or even years without seeing the breakthrough you desperately need. This is where faith and feelings must be separated, where what we know must triumph over what we feel. The silence of heaven does not indicate the absence of heaven. The delay in answered prayer does not suggest divine indifference. The continuation of struggle does not mean God has forgotten your name. Sometimes the most powerful work Jesus does in our lives happens not through dramatic intervention, but through quiet transformation of our character as we learn to trust him in the waiting. Consider the process of a seed growing in darkness beneath the soil. To the casual observer, nothing appears to be happening. The ground looks the same day after day, week after week. But beneath the surface, incredible activity is taking place. Roots are developing, strength is building, life is preparing to break through. The farmer who planted that seed does not dig it up daily to check on progress, because he trusts the process he cannot see. Your unanswered prayers may be working in ways you cannot perceive. Your continued struggles may be developing spiritual muscles you did not know you needed. Your seasons of waiting may be preparing you for blessings so significant that you would not have been ready to receive them earlier. The key is learning to trust the farmer who planted the seed of faith in your heart and knows exactly when the harvest should come. This trust grows stronger as you spend time in His presence, not just in moments of crisis, but in the quiet daily rhythms of life. Prayer becomes less about asking for things and more about knowing the one to whom you are speaking. Rest becomes less about perfect circumstances and more about perfect confidence in His character. Peace becomes less about having all the answers and more about knowing the one who holds all the answers. Many believers miss this deeper dimension of relationship with Jesus because they approach prayer like a drive-through restaurant, quickly placing their order and expecting immediate delivery. But intimacy requires time. Understanding develops through conversation. Trust builds through shared experience. The most profound rest comes not from getting everything you want, but from wanting the one who gives every good gift. When you begin to pray with this perspective, your requests change. Instead of demanding specific outcomes, you find yourself asking for wisdom to navigate whatever comes. Instead of insisting on immediate relief, you seek strength to endure with grace. Instead of trying to escape difficulty, you invite Jesus to meet you in the middle of it. This shift in how you approach prayer creates space for Him to work in ways that exceed your expectations and imagination. The rest that emerges from this kind of praying is not dependent on external validation or visible progress. It comes from knowing that the one who spoke galaxies into existence cares about the details of your daily life. It flows from understanding that the one who conquered death is more than capable of handling whatever challenges you face. It springs from the assurance that the one who promised to work all things together for good is actively involved in orchestrating circumstances for your ultimate benefit. This does not mean that following Jesus guarantees a life free from pain or difficulty. The Scriptures never promise that believers will be exempt from the struggles common to humanity. What they do promise is that we never face those struggles alone. They assure us that our pain has purpose, our trials have meaning, our suffering can produce spiritual fruit that nothing else can create. When you truly grasp this truth, it changes of your life. The how you interpret the seasons, difficult chapters are no longer viewed as evidence of God's absence, but as opportunities for His presence to be revealed in new ways. The unanswered prayers are no longer seen as divine rejection, but as invitations to trust beyond understanding. The delays in breakthrough are no longer interpreted as punishment, but as preparation for something greater than you originally envisioned. This perspective brings tremendous freedom from the exhausting cycle of spiritual performance that traps so many believers. You stop trying to earn God's attention through perfect prayers or flawless behavior. You cease attempting to manipulate outcomes through increased religious activity. You quit measuring your spiritual maturity by how quickly your prayers are answered or how easily your life flows. Instead, you learn to measure spiritual growth by how naturally you turn to Jesus in every situation, how quickly you remember His faithfulness when fear arises, how readily you rest in His love when circumstances suggest otherwise. You begin to evaluate the health of your prayer life not by the length of your requests, but by the depth of your trust. You assess your spiritual condition not by the absence of problems, but by your response to problems. As this foundation solidifies in your heart, you discover that rest with Jesus is not something you have to strive for or achieve through effort. It becomes your natural state, the default position of a soul that has learned to live in conscious awareness of His presence. Even in busy seasons, even during intense challenges, even when life feels chaotic, there remains a deep center of peace that the world cannot disturb. This inner sanctuary becomes a place you can retreat to at any moment, regardless of where you are or what you are doing. In the middle of a stressful meeting, you can quiet your heart and remember that Jesus hears your silent cry for wisdom. During a sleepless night of worry, you can turn your thoughts toward His promises and feel peace wash over your mind. In moments of unexpected crisis, you can breathe a simple prayer and sense His strength flowing into your weakness. The beauty of this kind of relationship with Jesus is that it requires no special location, no perfect timing, no ideal circumstances. He meets you wherever you are, whenever you call, however you come. The boardroom becomes a sanctuary when you acknowledge His presence. The hospital waiting room becomes a chapel hymn. The kitchen sink, when you pour out your heart, becomes an altar when you offer your mundane tasks as worship. This accessibility of divine presence transforms ordinary moments into opportunities for extraordinary encounter. Washing dishes becomes a time of gratitude for provision. Commuting to work becomes a season of intercession for others. Lying in bed at night becomes a sacred space for intimate conversation with the lover of your soul. The transformation of ordinary moments into sacred encounters reveals something profound about the nature of Jesus Himself. He is not confined to Sunday mornings or formal religious settings. He is not limited to crisis moments or desperate situations. He dwells in the everyday rhythms of life, waiting to be acknowledged, ready to be invited into whatever you are experiencing. This constant availability of His presence means that prayer becomes less of an event and more of a continuous conversation, less of a scheduled appointment and more of an ongoing dialogue with your closest friend. When you begin to live with this awareness, you discover that Jesus is already present in situations before you even think to invite Him. He is there in the tension of the difficult conversation before you ask for His wisdom. He is present in your financial struggles before you cry out for His provision. He is walking alongside you through seasons of grief before you realize you need His comfort. This preemptive presence reveals the depth of His care for you and His intimate involvement in every aspect of your existence. Many believers struggle with guilt about bringing small concerns to Jesus, feeling that they should only approach Him with significant matters worthy of divine attention. But this perspective misunderstands the heart of the one who notices when a sparrow falls and knows the number of hairs on your head. There is no concern too trivial for His attention, no worry too insignificant for His care, no detail too minor for His involvement. The God who manages galaxies is equally invested in your daily anxieties, your relationship struggles, your work pressures, and your health concerns. This comprehensive care creates space for a kind of rest that many have never experienced. It is the rest of knowing that nothing's His catches Him by surprise. Nothing overwhelms ability to handle. Nothing exceeds His desire to help. When you truly believe that the Creator of the universe is personally invested in your well-being, the weight of carrying everything on your own shoulders begins to lift. The burden of figuring everything out by yourself starts to ease. The pressure to control outcomes through your own efforts gradually diminishes. But this rest is not passive resignation or spiritual laziness. It is active trust that engages fully with life while maintaining deep confidence in divine sovereignty. It means working diligently while resting in the knowledge that your efforts are empowered by His strength. It involves planning carefully while holding your plans loosely, ready to adjust when His direction becomes clear. It requires fighting battles while remembering that the ultimate victory has already been secured. This balance between human responsibility and divine dependence is where many believers find themselves confused. They swing between extremes, either trying to do everything in their own strength or becoming completely passive and expecting God to do everything without their participation. The truth lies in partnership, a divine collaboration where your efforts are empowered by His grace and your weaknesses are strengthened by His power. When you pray from this place of partnership, your requests reflect both dependence and responsibility. You ask for wisdom while committing to apply whatever insights He provides. You seek strength while positioning yourself to receive it through spiritual disciplines. You request breakthrough while remaining faithful in the process of waiting. You plead for healing while taking practical steps toward wellness. This approach honors both divine sovereignty and human agency, creating space for miraculous intervention within the context of responsible living. The rest that flows from this understanding is dynamic rather than static. It moves with you through changing circumstances, adapts to new challenges, and grows stronger through testing. Unlike worldly peace that requires perfect conditions to survive, this spiritual rest thrives in the midst of imperfection. It remains steady during storms, constant during confusion, and secure during seasons of significant change. Consider how this plays out in practical terms. When facing a major decision, instead of being paralyzed by fear of making the wrong choice, you can rest in the knowledge that Jesus guides those who seek His direction. You can pray for wisdom, seek counsel from mature believers, examine the Scriptures for relevant principles, and then move forward with confidence that He will redirect your steps if needed. The anxiety of decision-making diminishes when you trust that His guidance is available and His course corrections are always gentle. When dealing with difficult relationships, instead of carrying the crushing weight of trying to change other people, you can rest in the truth that hearts are transformed by divine power, not human manipulation. You can pray for those who hurt you, love them as best you can, set healthy boundaries when necessary, and trust Jesus to work in ways that you cannot. The exhaustion of trying to control how others treat you fades when you remember that your worth comes from His love, not their approval. When struggling with financial concerns, instead of being consumed by worry about provision, you can rest in the promise that He knows your needs before you ask. You can work faithfully, manage resources wisely, seek opportunities diligently, and trust that His provision comes in many forms. The sleepless nights spent calculating and recalculating expenses become peaceful hours of prayer when you remember that your security rests in His faithfulness, not your bank account. Tonight, you have discovered that prayer is not about perfect words, but about an authentic heart. You have learned that rest is not found in perfect circumstances, but in perfect trust. Jesus hears every whisper, sees every tear, knows every struggle. His presence transforms ordinary moments into sacred encounters, turning your deepest anxieties into opportunities for divine peace. Rest in this truth tonight.